Trump derangement syndrome is reaching its end stage. A massive Pennsylvania ballot counting decision from the Supreme Court. Big tech battle escalates with the DOJ. Trump takes on Fauci, and so much more. Welcome, everyone, to the Buck Sexton Show. Thank you so much for being here. You will notice that right now there's a tension in most of the media broadcasts out there. There's an anxiety. That shows you in and of itself how many people are really invested emotionally, psychologically, professionally in a certain outcome of this election. And understand this, as I've been telling you all along, it is entirely unclear to me how liberals will be able to process a Trump reelection should that happen. It is entirely beyond my comprehension how they will manage to comprehend this, how they'll manage to actually deal with this without, I don't know, more craziness in the streets, rioting, looting, who knows? Or they'll just come up with another reason why the president didn't win this time around. But you can see it. It's getting worse because they're also saying crazier and crazier stuff, and you barely even notice it. And I'm talking about the biggest names in the Democrat Party. I'm talking about people with massive followings online and social media. These are people who you would expect to exercise some degree of judgment, some degree of, or at least a willingness to hold back with their most insane and outlandish emotions about this upcoming election, which is now 2 weeks from today. And as we know, I think over 30 million, at least as of yesterday, early ballots have already been cast. So there's a lot of stuff going on already. And we can see how this battleground is shaping up so far. And it is going to be an absolute dogfight, street fight. Come up with your term of art here. It's definitely going to get ugly. It's going to be ugly. You're seeing Trump derangement syndrome really reaching new heights because remember, the last time we got to this phase, even Trump supporters, I voted for the president in the first election. I was a vocal supporter of him all throughout the general election, encouraging everybody I could to vote for him. And I thought I was doing something that was probably not going to work out. I just figured the Hillary machine, too big, too much. Turned out, thank God, that was wrong. This time around, though, the liberals are going into this with a state of panic in the back of their minds. Yeah, they want to put on a big show of how confident they are right now. Oh, look at Joe in the polls. He's leading in every battleground state. He's leading in just the national poll. He's leading it. Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see. If anything, we've already come to the conclusion of the Trump era that a lot of the old political shibboleths, a lot of the old maxims that we had lived by in politics turned out not to be true, right? Oh, the candidate with the best ground game, the candidate with the most media buys in key markets or raises the most money, although that's never really been true. No, Trump was 97% destined to lose in 2016, and they want you to believe somehow that he's even more destined to lose now. And I don't buy it, and I know you don't buy it either. So just remember that. There is an advantage, there is an incentive in making sure that Trump voters feel like this is hopeless. The media is in on this. Trump's opponent, Biden, all the rest of them are in on this. And now we've got this debate coming up on Thursday, which I'll talk more about. But I think this will be one of the most watched presidential debates in history. I think this one is going to be completely off the chain, off the hook, however you want to say it. And you can tell based on the way the Democrats are looking at all of this and how they're preparing their own side that one, and this will tie into our discussion about Pennsylvania and the ballot, the delayed ballot counting that the Supreme Court has now said will occur there. I'm going to get to that. They want everyone to know they're not going to concede on election night if it's close. Depends on how close it is, probably, but they're not going to concede. So we're not going to be through this. So imagine all the tension, all the anxiety of this year. This has been a tough year for America. I don't care what part of the country you're in. COVID, the lockdowns, just the general sense of misery and frustration that so many people have, including a lot of people that feel real lost because of the family members that have passed away from COVID. You know, the country's in a tough spot right now. And fascinatingly enough, though, despite all those very true statements, you have 55% in the most recent polling of Americans saying that they think they're better off now than they were 4 years ago. I think that's only possible. The only way you get to that perception is if you're measuring Trump before COVID hit. How were you doing before COVID? And people believe that they're going to go back to that place as soon as we get through this. This is temporary. It shall pass. The question now is how soon and how much damage is being done in the meantime. But that's all a very rational way of looking at this. And you have to remember that we're dealing with an entirely irrational opposition, Democrat Party, mainstream media. Here is Elizabeth Warren, who I actually thought, despite her Native American heritage debacle, despite all that, I really believe that Elizabeth Warren was probably going to be the Democrat nominee. And she came really, I think you'd say, in third place behind Bernie and Biden. But this is that's important because here's somebody who's not just a random TV commentator who's trying to get attention, who's not just out there trying to make a name for himself or herself by being outrageous. This is someone who we believe, or we are led to believe, should be taken very seriously, right? We should listen to her. We should believe that she's thinking about her words. And then she says stuff like this, which I'd have to say, for a sitting United States senator from Massachusetts to say this, it's pretty crazy, but it's really indicative of this moment. I don't think that this is an outlier statement, and that's what I believe is so important. I think that this is where the Democrats really are now. Not all of them, but a lot of them, most of them. This is now the ethos of the party. Here she is. Play clip 3.
The climate crisis is here, and no, it is not. The science around this is not controversial. The science is clear. In fact, you know what scares me to death? Is every time we get more data and reanalyze the data, what we discover is the problem's even worse than we thought. We have even less time than we thought. And so what has Donald Trump done for 4 years? He not only hasn't made things better, he has actively made them worse. He withdrew us from the Paris Climate Accord. He's put a coal lobbyist in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency. What could possibly go wrong? He has opened up for offshore drilling, and he has said yes to the oil companies. They can drill in the Arctic National Wildlife Preserve. Donald Trump threatens the existence of human life, of all life on this planet.
Now, that last line is what I really wanted you to hear. Donald Trump threatens the existence of human life on this planet. Donald Trump is going to make humanity go extinct. Do you see that? Do you hear that, friends? Sitting senator from Massachusetts came in third in the Democrat primary. She says that out loud. She says that over a loudspeaker at a press conference. Doesn't even really get much notice. Yeah, that's pretty standard. Trump is going to eradicate the human species. I'm not making this up. I'm not exaggerating. Donald Trump threatens the existence of human life. Those are her words. Her chosen, practiced, prepared words. How do you handle a left-wing opposition that speaks in this way, that takes these kinds of positions? How do you have a civil political dialogue with people who keep looking at you saying, the data says, unless you do everything that we say, human life will cease to exist on this planet? Wouldn't it be challenging to come up with a crazier theory? Wouldn't you have to really struggle to come up with something that is both cataclysmic in its outlook and catastrophic in its implementation, which is what this Green New Deal and all this climate stuff would be? Wouldn't you see it that way? Yeah. And then there's the other part of this. Here we are, still struggling through COVID, still on this uneven footing, depending on what state you're in. Some places doing a little better than others, but country's not normal. We don't get to really see each other, socialize, live our lives, go out there. Nope. Everyone's being told all the time, wear a mask, stay inside, be afraid of your fellow human beings. Stay away from them. Everybody. Not safe. Can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner, Fauci says. Sorry, no Thanksgiving for you this year. Right. They're saying all of that, and yet Elizabeth Warren will also turn around and start talking about the climate crisis. I mean, she was talking, I don't even remember what it was she said, but, they're going to go drill somewhere. Who cares? Only people for whom this is a religious belief think that anybody sitting around wondering about how awful it is that the president has a person who's tied to the coal lobby working for the EPA, or if that's even true, I don't even know. And the point is, I don't care. It doesn't matter. We got much more important stuff right now. But her voice is quivering, and she's at least projecting this sense of imminent catastrophe, unless we defeat Donald Trump at the election. They can't just make a normal good faith argument about where Trump has succeeded, where he's failed, what they do better. It's vote for Biden or else the world is going to come to an end. And that's not me exaggerating. That's what their pitch is. That is what Elizabeth Warren is telling you here. An existential threat to humanity. That is what Donald Trump represents. Now, I understand that by looking at the craziness of the other side, there might be a complacency, or I don't know, you could go with complacency, or you could feel a helplessness. How could we combat this? How can you deal with this level of ideological insanity? But I'm bringing it up just because I think when you see what the leaders of that party are saying and what they're willing to say about this president, you'll understand everything that's going to flow from here until the next few weeks, because I don't think it's going to be over in 2 weeks. I think they're going to extend it. You're going to see that this is everything they've got. And so much of this, I think, is also tied into people who are, and I'll just say it, people who have a kind of emptiness. I've referred to Hillary Clinton before as having a hole in her soul. And I think there are a lot of people who have holes in their souls right now, and perhaps even more so than usual because of all the understandable anxiety and all the friction and fear around COVID. But instead of taking a longer term view about why we're really here on this earth and thinking about a relationship with God and taking it to that level of existential thought and consideration and philosophy, they turn around and no, Trump is an existential threat to people who don't know why they're here. Trump is an existential threat to those who have to seek some other form of understanding what their purpose is every day. Because if it's defeating this politician named Donald J. Trump, who I think did a very good job as president, as you know, is clearly not a threat to the world and is more capable in every respect than his competitor here, Joe Biden. If that's really an existential threat to the world, what are we to make of what's happened for the last 4 years? Doesn't make any sense. There is a senselessness in the arguments here. So just be prepared for it, because it's going to get very nasty out there. It's going to get ugly, and it's going to get evil. They didn't do anything really so far, at least with ACB. Seemed like they couldn't come up with anything. But you are going to hear things said, not just about Trump, but about Trump voters too, for the next 2 weeks that would shock a person who was not prepared with an understanding of just how deep into Trump derangement syndrome the left has gone. You've got to keep it in mind. You've got to remember that, because otherwise you're going to be caught off guard. Recently, I got a crash course in home title theft. You better pray this crime never happens to you, because it can ruin you financially. It goes after your most valuable asset, your home. Here's what happens. The legal title to all of our homes are online. That's right. They're up there in the cloud. A cyber thief hacks into these, finds your home's title, and uses a quitclaim deed, kicks you off, puts themselves on the home, and then all of a sudden they can take out loans, steal your equity. You often won't find out about this until the payment notices arrive or perhaps even an eviction notice. You have to create a virtual barrier around your home's title with Home Title Lock. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and use the promo code RADIO to get yourself 30 free days of protection. You can also check once you go to HomeTitleLock.com, put in your address to see if you're a victim of this crime already and don't even know it. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com. Use the promo code RADIO. That will get you 30 free days of protection. Create a virtual barrier around your home's title today.
And if you're voting for that man who 2 weeks from Election Day is calling for the arrest of his opponent, then you have absolutely no idea what America is about. Let me say it again. You have no idea what this country is about if you are supporting a man who 2 weeks out is calling for the arrest of his opponent. You can't explain that away. You can't explain that away to history. You can't explain that away to your children or grandchildren. You just can't. And you can't plead ignorance because you know better.
I don't think you can explain away spending more than 15 seconds watching the Joe Scarborough show in the morning, but that's me. Here he is, one of the most fervent anti-Trumpers out there. And look, we all understand this same thing with these different anti-Trump groups that have raised all this money from Democrats to trash Trump. It's just about money, just about influence, money, power. No principles involved here. There's no such thing as a principled, never Trump, pro-Biden, conservative opposition. Certainly not anymore, and you could argue probably not from the beginning either. There's no such thing. Just frauds. It's people lying, pretending to be something that they're not. But here you get Joe Scarborough saying that the big problem he sees, one of many, I'm sure, with Donald Trump, is that he was calling for the arrest of his opponent. And I'm not going to call him out because he's a conservative radio host, not one of the very, very big names, so before any of you guys, but somebody yesterday I saw saying that, could you imagine if Democrats were calling for the arrest of their political opponents? Come on, conservatives, like we can't. And I'm looking at this saying, what do you think the Mueller probe was all about? What do people think using a special counsel that was unaccountable to anybody, really, because you had an attorney general who was recused, so nobody was going to step in and actually make sure this was on the up and up. What do you call unleashing a special counsel on people with the express purpose of taking down an administration, prosecuting people within the administration, up to and including the president if they could get away with it? If they had enough to impeach and remove, they would have done it and then try to throw Donald Trump in prison. You know that. They want to throw General Flynn in prison after 30 years of serving in the United States military and being the DIA director under the Obama administration because they lied about a conversation that he had with a couple of FBI agents who lied about why they were even talking to him in the first place, to get him. So now we're going to get lectured by the other side when the Hunter Biden emails have come out and we see what's really going on. We're going to get lectured about how, but you shouldn't want anything. You shouldn't want to see your opponents prosecuted. The Democrats tried to imprison Trump supporters, his family members, everyone around him for almost 4 uninterrupted years. And then impeached him anyway when they couldn't actually get the political muscle together to really make it happen, to get a removal from office. So now we're going to be lectured about how Trump says, lock her up. Trump says these things, and he actually has a point because Hillary did break the law, and it looks like maybe Joe Biden also did break the law. Hillary 100% broke the law. I don't care what moron James Comey says. But now we have Joe Biden. Maybe he broke the law too. So does the law count or not?
The whole lock 'em up, false conspiracy theories against the Bidens really is stunning. I mean, he could be talking about the economy. and making false claims about that, but, blame it on COVID. He could be talking about a Supreme Court nominee who is popular with his base and what they've done with the courts. Yet he's going after, these Rudy Giuliani created, false plots that we now have learned could well be tied to Russian intelligence, because Giuliani was wittingly or unwittingly meeting with Russian intelligence agents, people who've been designated by the U.S. government as such.
What the heck is she talking about? Let's really dig into this for a moment, shall we? That is Andrea Mitchell, who, for reasons unbeknownst to me, is considered a person that other human beings should listen to on matters of politics and news over at NBC, and has for a long time. I know she's been in the game for a long time. She's over at NBC. And she's saying things that are the mainstream Democrat talking points right now. She's saying there's a Russian conspiracy theory. She's saying that Rudy Giuliani was talking to Russian agents and all this. They're bringing back the whole Russia thing. It's, as Yogi Berra said, deja vu all over again. Right? That's where we are. This is 2016 part 2. Do you recall, I think it was early in the summer, I said they're going to bring back Russia collusion. I wasn't sure how. I thought maybe they'd just make the same allegations, but I knew, because people have been hardwired on the left to think of Russia as this omnipresent menace that can go after you everywhere and anywhere in favor of Donald Trump. It's always on Trump's behalf, too. It's never just an attack on the country. It's always like Trump is so tight with Putin and all this other stuff that they've been told. But she's saying the Hunter Biden scandal is a false conspiracy theory. What is false about it? Really spend a moment to think about this today. What exactly has been said that's not true? No intelligent person believes that the laptop is not Hunter Biden's, a laptop that has intimate photos of Hunter Biden on it, and that's putting it gently. No one thinks that that's not real, that it's some deep fake. No one said that. The campaign hasn't claimed that that's the case. They've only said that Joe Biden didn't have an official meeting on his schedule with this Russian. Look, here's what you have to start with. Run this thought experiment. If there was a video of Joe Biden laughing, and again, this is a thought experiment, theoretical, right? So I'm not, and I don't want Media Matters or whatever to clip this and, look what Buck Sexton's saying on his radio show. No, I'm just saying, think this through. If there was a video of Russian intelligence agents sitting down with, a Ukrainian businessman, forget about Russian intelligence agents, Ukrainian businessmen sitting down with Hunter and Joe Biden talking about the payment structure for this Burisma scheme and how they're going to make sure that the investigators, get pushed away from this and all this other stuff, right? But if it was on tape, smoking gun, and we already have smoking gun emails, but let's say it's on video. Do you think any of the people that were calling this a conspiracy yesterday or today would change their minds tomorrow? Do you think that any Democrat with power and influence in the media or in the Democrat Party is able to be swayed no matter what the evidence is here around Burisma and this corrupt scheme? The answer is no. So when you understand that, when you see how it doesn't matter, then you can also understand very quickly why is it that they just keep saying things that are so obviously untrue. Because, friends, when it comes to defeating Trump for Democrats, the truth does not matter. It's irrelevant. They don't care. How else could you explain what they're trying to do here? How else could you explain the way that they're just pretending these stories? At first it didn't exist and they tried to suppress it. And then they tried to call it a non-story, but turned out that the suppression effort became that day an even bigger story than the Hunter Biden story. And so then it probably spread even further than it would have otherwise. And then they said, it doesn't show anything. He didn't do anything wrong. That was always Joe Biden's line when he was pressed about this months and months ago. He didn't do anything wrong. That's what he would yell at reporters, the occasional reporter who would ask about the Burisma situation. And now beyond that, going even further, they're saying that it's a Russian disinformation campaign. They have exactly Zero evidence of this, but with incredible precision, like a Swiss watch, all of a sudden this became what you would hear from the biggest news outlets and the biggest, Democrat mouthpieces in the whole country. You have Politico. Here you go. Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinfo, dozens of former intel officials say. Our intelligence community is never going to recover. Its reputation is never going to recover from what's happened in these Trump years. I mean, the fact that you had Brennan and Clapper and all these other deep state clowns doing the stuff that they did to try and destroy Donald Trump is stunning. Absolutely stunning. I mean, they're supposed to be nonpartisan professionals who don't get into the political fray. And what we saw was they're actually willing to be weaponized and use their access and the powers of their office in order to pull that off. Right? That's what we've learned about my old institution, the CIA, place I worked for years, and made some great friends there and have some very fond memories of the place. But it was a mess then. But we did have a purpose. We did want to prevent the towers from getting hit with planes or, public squares getting bombed, these kinds of mass casualty attacks. We had a reason for showing up to work every day that, for at least a time, seemed to transcend politics. And with the not entire disappearance, obviously, I saw what just happened in France with this guy who got beheaded for showing a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad. That's still a thing that can get you beheaded in France, apparently. But with the decline of Islamic, of jihadism, Islamic radicalism around the world as an imminent threat to the U.S., what we see is now the biggest threat is supposed to be internal. It's almost like all these lib movies and TV shows that I've seen where the bad guys always end up being, the real threat to the United States always comes from some corporation or some right-wing group that's trying to seize power from within the government, right? But it's always very, very right-wing. They believe this. I mean, they've come to believe this. At a time when the left can call upon the biggest, wealthiest companies, most influential companies in the world, right? Remember, Facebook, Google, and we'll talk about the DOJ suit coming up here against them to try to finally break up at least Google, which I think is absolutely should happen. There should be more competition. More competition ensures for more accountability. And antitrust, for people to say, "Oh, Buck, let the market speak." Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. We'll get there. But the left has a stranglehold on these massive institutions, more influential, powerful, wealthy than any other corporations really in the world. Remember, there's Walmart will sell you stuff. Facebook and Google determine what you see, what you buy, how you communicate. Far more influential, right? I mean, I know Walmart does a very good job of delivering stuff putting stuff in the stores for a cheap price. But what these social media giants do, the left controls them. And yet they're always worried about Trump as the fascist. This is a fabrication, and this is a figment of their imagination. That Donald Trump is on the cusp of some kind of right-wing overthrow of our government system. And this is the kind of language that they use. Meanwhile, on the other side, they actually tried to overthrow a president. They just used the weaponization of the law and the intelligence community to achieve that. Unfortunately, they were unable to succeed, but that doesn't mean the next time around they won't. And why should we believe they won't try it again? Think about this. They got away with it. They weren't entirely successful, but who's been held to account? And I know it would have been more powerful, more clicks, more downloads. If I tell everybody, "Oh, the Durham's going to get everybody. He's going to line them up and frog march them out." The Durham probe couldn't tell you that because I knew it wasn't going to happen. Or at least that was my very strong feeling that I felt obligated to share with you. And sure enough, here we are 2 weeks from an election. Yeah, the Durham probe? Not so much. Not so much. But these former intelligence officials, these former intelligence officials who are coming out and saying the Hunter Biden story is Russian disinformation, you also have to remember they see something in this for themselves. It's all about now, it's changed so much because of instantaneous and omnipresent digital media. It's about your profile. You know who gets the top jobs in the next Biden administration? The people who are the best known, have the best connections, and the most clout. In many ways, honestly, the most famous in their field or the most well known in their area of practice. So for some of these former intelligence people, if they want to be the CIA director, deputy director, FBI director, you name it, a great way to do it is by signing your name to things like this. So you got these 50 former intelligence officials sign this letter casting doubt on the provenance of a New York Post story. Here's what it says. Quote, the emails allegedly belonging to Joe Biden's son has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. The letter signed on Monday centers around a batch of documents released by the New York Post last week that purport to tie the Democratic nominee to his son Hunter's business dealings. Under the banner headline, Biden's secret emails, the Post reported it was given a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop hard drive by President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who said he got it from a Mac shop owner in Delaware who also alerted the FBI. While the letter's signatories presented no new evidence, they said their national security experience had made them deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in this case and cited several elements of the story that suggested the Kremlin's hand at work. Nick Shapiro, a former top aide under CIA Director John Brennan, provided Politico with the letter on Monday. He noted that the IC leaders who have signed this letter worked for the past 4 presidents, including Trump. That means nothing. The real power here, however, is the number of former working-level IC officers. Look, friends, the CIA and the intelligence community are full of a bunch of libs. Elizabeth Warren is a United States senator and was a professor at Harvard Law School, and she says the president's an existential threat to human life. Okay? Do you think that mentality, she's an elite, Harvard professor, rich lady living in Massachusetts, and she says stuff like that and people clap for her. You don't think that there are plenty of folks working in the intelligence community, working in law enforcement, who also feel that way? And if you felt that way, if you really believe the president was an existential threat to this nation, to our institutions of governance, or to human life on planet Earth, what would you not be willing to do? So we know the crazy is there. We know the crazy is widespread within the Democrat Party. So what else do we have to do here for everyone to understand that that's going to have consequences? They're signing a letter. This letter is an embarrassment, an absolute embarrassment. They're just basically saying, don't believe this. Rely on our resumes and our perceived credibility in the public's eye. Don't believe that this is real because we say so. This is scary. I mean, really, the suppression campaign around the Hunter Biden emails for me is still, and on the make-believe Russian the disinformation is calling this Russian disinformation. That's the great irony. But whatever works, we're in this final stretch here for the Democrats. Whatever they have to pull off, whatever they have to say, they'll do it. They'll do it. And that's what you're seeing play out right now.
This is the laptop from hell. They say right in the laptop that, the big man has to get 10%. And then in another case, they say 50%. This is 100%. And even if he didn't get, and he does get, and he lives like a king, even if he didn't get all of this money, and everybody's known this in Washington for a long time. This isn't surprising. Nobody's surprised by this. But even if he didn't, you can't go to China and have the son walk out with $1.5 billion to manage. You can't go to Ukraine and have him get $183,000 a month with a $3 million upfront payment. You can't get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife. $3.5 million. And you have no experience. You didn't have a job until your father became vice president. It's disgraceful.
How is Joe Biden going to escape all this at the upcoming presidential debate this Thursday? How is he going to evade all of these questions and allegations? Clearly, the president's going to bring them up, and this could be it. I just hope that Trump is able to stay focused and stay on task, pick his punches, and throw them one by one. Don't flail, so to speak, right? He needs to be precise when he goes after Biden on this stuff. Because this also goes to a much larger issue beyond even just the corruption. Think about how much you've been lectured for the last 4 years. I mean, I'm getting angry. And I rarely get angry, but I'm getting angry about what I'm seeing unfold here with the media, because the favorite thing that they always say about Trump is he lies, he lies. That's all they'll say, right? I mean, I remember back in February being on the Bill Maher show, and it was just impossible to get a word in edgewise, or because it's just, well, Trump lies. So he's a liar. So everything he says doesn't matter because he's a liar. How do you argue with that? What do you say to somebody when they say that? First of all, I think that's not true. And we've discussed many times here on the show, the president can be a little bit grandiose, a little bit of a salesman, but he's been upfront about who he is and what he wants to do. And that's the fundamental truth of his presidency. The one that matters to all of us, not, whether he thinks he had the biggest crowd size at some event or not. Who cares? But Joe Biden's a liar, friends. And not only is he a liar, he has the entire media complex acting as his conspirators, his co-conspirators in the lies. It's one thing to have a president who has the entirety of 95% of the media apparatus constantly opposed to him. And they talk about the risk that he poses of fascism. That's the media in a fascist country. You know what the media does? The bidding of the fascist. What's more likely? You get a Joe Biden presidency, and all of a sudden there'll be an effort to completely suppress the truth and support him no matter what he does. Which is the one that should scare people who believe in the free exchange of ideas more? We all know it's not Trump.